Act 1. The World in 2065. It is a warm morning, January 14th, 2065. Michael Conrad stirs from his slumber, roused by the relentless clatter of machinery echoing outside his modest apartment in the charming coastal town of Hamilton, New Jersey. With a heavy sigh, he swings his legs over the edge of the bed, letting his feet dangle for a moment. He reaches for the grimy window shade, tugging it upward with a flick of his wrist to unveil the scene outside. "Not again, those damn bulldozers," he grumbles, a wave of frustration washing over him like the incoming tide. The cacophony of heavy construction equipment has morphed into a dismal soundtrack, reverberating through the lives of the town's residents, a constant reminder of the environmental devastation ravaging their shores. Through the glass, Michael can see the monstrous orange machines ploughing defiantly through the sandy expanse, their tires churning the earth in chaotic spirals. They seem to engage in a futile ballet, desperately hauling dunes westward in a misguided attempt to hold back the encroaching Atlantic, the relentless force of nature that refuses to be tamed. As Michael stares out at this industrial invasion of his beloved beach, a pang of anxiety curls deep in his gut. The town he once cherished, where his roots run deep, is now ensnared in a formidable struggle against the very elements that have shaped it for generations. The impacts of climate change, starkly visible for decades, have reshaped the landscape in irreversible ways. Hamilton, once a secure haven from the Atlantic's grasp, has been rewritten into a precarious shore point, an unfortunate casualty of the complacency among those in power. His thoughts drift wistfully to simpler times, when the beach sprawled a serene 25 miles east of the family home, its sands inviting and untouched. Nostalgia washes over him, tinged with a palpable sense of loss. "I really need to start considering a move soon," he muses, the weight of the realization pressing down on him as he straightens the thin sheets on his small single bed. A fleeting glance at his wrist device reveals the familiar data he relies on each day, the neon digits blinking to life. Time, 0753. Date, January 14th. Temperature, 81 degrees Fahrenheit. He ponders, a spark of hope flickering within him. Slightly cooler than yesterday morning. Maybe things are finally taking a turn for the better. Michael shuffles toward the cramped kitchen area he shares with the Gonzalez family. As he enters, he finds Antonio Gonzalez already occupying the galley-style space, a narrow strip barely accommodating one, let alone two. Antonio greets him with a grunt, fiercely focused on coaxing the last droplets of coffee from an old percolator. Today is Coffee Day, a rare occasion to celebrate amidst the grim realities of 2065. In this future world, coffee has transformed into a precious commodity, now a luxury item far removed from its once ubiquitous nature. The repercussions of climate change, long ignored and underestimated, have decimated crops. Once abundant and accessible, coffee now sits just beyond the grasp of the average citizen, its beans bearing the scars of environmental upheaval. Michael's mind drifts to the tales spun by his grandfather, stories of a time when, back in my day, you could buy coffee for just a few dollars a pound. His grandfather, Edmund Conrad, born in 1975, had inhabited a world that feels distant and surreal to Michael. Without Papa's vivid stories, Michael would be left with scant knowledge of his own country's past. He cherishes these tales, which often blend the lines of fairy tales and science fiction. Michael's father, himself an early resistor to the encroaching changes, reassured him that his grandfather's nostalgic recollections were indeed true. For Michael's generation, those born after 2040, conducting personal research has become an insurmountable challenge. The pervasive ban on books, enacted for everyone's good, has effectively erased 85% of the literature once available. Only texts deemed safe or aligned with the official narrative remain, leaving Michael and his peers to navigate a world rich in political propaganda. Struggling against the tumultuous tides of the economy, Michael found himself sharing a cramped four-room apartment with the Gonzalez family, matched through an impersonal dwelling lottery. Their bond is forged by urgency and necessity, the common quest for affordable housing in an increasingly turbulent world. As of 2030, the value of the American dollar had dropped dramatically. The dollar was worth but a fraction of previous decades. Decades of failed policies, including massive tariffs, caused trade wars with practically every nation on the planet. Soon, everyday items were priced out of the reach of citizens. In this new world that Michael's generation inherited, there was no middle class. This dire situation was highlighted by the staggering cost of a modest four-room flat, which could command an eye-watering $9,000 each month. In this tiny unit, the Gonzalez family, comprising Antonio, a hard-working cook at a local restaurant, Maria, his diligent wife who worked as a housekeeper, and their son Felipe, employed as a laborer, sometimes managed to scrape together enough funds to meet their exorbitant rent. The financial contributions of Michael, who was also struggling to make ends meet, barely supplemented the family's income, but provided just enough to keep them all afloat. The Gonzalez family represented a group of individuals who had been allowed to stay in the country following a mass deportation crisis that had rocked the nation 40 years prior. In recent times, government attitudes towards immigrants, particularly those labeled as dark people, have softened considerably. The political climate shifted when leaders recognized that the nation's economy heavily relied on the labor provided by these marginalized communities, highlighting an uncomfortable dependency on the very people they once sought to expel. Unfortunately for the nation, the sky-high costs of fruits and vegetables never returned to pre-deportation levels.